Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, and I have a brand new camera which I think will do a much better job of taking photos and video, and I'm here in Bangkok, Thailand, and we're discussing some thoughts on my mind tonight, and it concerns whether bad afterlife information is better than no afterlife information. So it's kind of a debatable topic, and I thought we'd explore that a bit. But before we get started, let's take a look around this neighborhood. So actually, I'm staying just up the street. There's a very cool looking temple right here. I figure we'll take a quick look at that. And it's kind of dystopian right now in Bangkok. And what I mean by that is that the pollution, the smog is so bad that there's advisories to stay inside. I have not left my condo that much because they're literally saying that you should be wearing like a gas mask to step outside. I went by one of the busy streets today and there was like this kind of gray smog rolling in from greater Bangkok. And basically I think we're like one step away from one of those dystopian futures where everybody's wearing gas masks. That said, it's still great to come here and visit the place, but we just have to be very mindful of that condition. Now, fortunately, I'm only in Bangkok a couple more days. I am leaving for the coastline in 3 days. I'll be going to Jom Tien. So I only have a few more days to endure this kind of pollution hazard, I guess. So hopefully I will make it there in time. I will just keep staying indoors. Of course, most of the locals, they're used to it, but sometimes you'll see people wearing masks walking around, like this guy, for example. You know, especially if you have a job or something where you're driving a motorbike, it's like you definitely need to keep your face covered. I mean, you can't be out in this every single day. I was out in this just last night. I came back with like a throbbing headache where there's way too much like carbon monoxide. It was pretty awful. But anyway, let's take a look at this temple and we'll discuss the subject. By the way, you are watching Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, where we discuss complex metaphysical issues. If you like this kind of stuff, please hit that subscribe button, punch the notification bell, like this video, share the video. All of that really helps. We're about 10% a travel channel and 90% a supernatural discussion channel. So this is a really interesting temple because it looks almost like a European building. And there's this really, really cool spinning wheel up there. And I think this has to do with the cycle of reincarnation, the wheel of life, the wheel of Dharma, something along those lines. And the building itself, it looks like a European building, and it's multiple stories, and it's very active. So I was just here maybe half an hour ago. And I was trying to make the video then, but I had some problems with the traffic and the noise and the pollution. But, so I'm kind of remaking it now. But anyway, when I was out here before, there were actually monks all over the place cleaning. In fact, there's a monk right there, if you can see him. So it's a very active temple, and I love the spinning wheel. I love the design. I don't know the name of the temple. I do, I'm definitely not very well educated, because I noticed like this one statue, and it looks Hindu to me, doesn't it? Like it's some kind of multi-armed goddess. But I'm a terrible tour guide. I don't know what that actually means. But anyway, let's walk back and we'll discuss what the main subject today is. So in this field, and the thing that we talk about on this channel so much concerns what happens when you die. What are the literal conditions of an afterlife? Because throughout history, with religions especially, there has always been a tendency to gloss over that, or even say that it's not our place to know. So there's a kind of impression about, quote, heaven that involves this very churchy type of environment of just, I guess, just like going around and worshiping the Holy Trinity for all eternity, you know. So when you go to any kind of church, any kind of medieval church, a Gothic cathedral, any place like that, I mean, it's designed to encapsulate or look like some kind of a heavenly abode, a heavenly environment here on the mortal coil. And there might even be some kind of truth behind that, because when we look into the afterlife accounts, there is the concept of higher dimensional realms, which can be, you know, very fantastical looking, very beautiful looking, and maybe if somebody has a particular kind of experience, they may interpret what that experience was, and it may look like a church. So kind of, you know, buried within the church, there is some element of truth hidden somewhere in there. So this is actually my condominium. I'm debating just going back inside right now because, for one, there's the pollution this time of day is really bad, and also it's a little bit noisy. There's not really anywhere I can go, and I'm paranoid because I have this new phone, which is really nice, and there have been a lot of reports of people going by on their motorbikes just grabbing people's phones, especially foreigners. So I have to be a little bit cautious about this. Maybe I'll just we can look down this alleyway for a minute. So basically, throughout the ages, there has always been the concept of an afterlife, but even leading up into the modern age, there isn't a concrete idea about what it is. So religions will have this churchy idea, and you know, with all this, you know, there's this system of penalties and staying on the good list versus the naughty list, being able to get into heaven. And then you have the kind of new age information, which of course is much closer to the reality. But the problem is that the new age information can also really get out of hand. And that's the thing that, well, I tackle so much on this channel. The idea that, or rather, you know, all the ideas that come out of that genre, which sometimes are, you know, very difficult to verify, or they don't make a lot of sense, or they do nothing to help people who are grieving a loved one, for example. And so very often it's our personal experiences that shed the most light on the subject. I'm just gonna go back into my place, I think. I'm just way too paranoid having this phone out. So you can see the place I'm staying at. But as I was saying, so very, you know, what's very interesting is that people's personal experiences tend to create the most accurate interpretation. It includes near-death experiences sometimes, but NDEs are also, I mean, they can be misinterpreted as well after the fact, but nonetheless, NDEs, OBEs, after-death encounters, visitation experiences, these types of things. And then when things go wrong, it's trying to make sense of all that afterwards, or trying to publish information about that somehow applies to everybody. So you end up in a field with just a lot of confusion. All right, we're home. My glorious itty-bitty studio apartment here in Bangkok. So, what was I saying? So, I do think it's just really interesting that people's personal experiences create the most accurate information, and when you listen to New Age authors and gurus and, you know, people who want to be gurus, it tends to go way off course. And if people just listened or paid attention to their personal experiences, they would have a better idea of what the afterlife was like. And sometimes it goes against religious teachings, it goes against spiritualist teachings, because they try to say that, you know, that that there are no physical environments after you die. They don't like the idea that an afterlife might actually look and feel in a way that's very similar to this world, because that completely goes against, you know, some of the very core concepts of dying and ascending into some higher realm that is, you know, beyond our comprehension, which I suppose that can happen. But it's just like 90% of people's afterlife experiences, if not 95%, are these Earth-like worlds, which I call like the astral parallel Earth, or the astral second Earth. And this is what everybody experiences, you know. So when a medium says, you know, Uncle Larry is fly fishing, you know, it doesn't mean that it's a metaphor or anything like that. It means Uncle Larry is literally on the astral domain and he's fly fishing. And it's very, very difficult to, you know, for those concepts to punch a hole in religious teachings, and you know, they have, you know, hundreds, thousands of years of religious teachings, as well as modern New Age movement teachings. It's really, really difficult to merge these things together. And it doesn't mean that the astral Earth is all there is. There's many, 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 many types of realms and places that we can go to. But the very accurate information, it doesn't always, it tends to go against the grain. And that's why it's so difficult for accurate information to really penetrate and catch on. And of course, that's what I do, is I'm trying to change that. Let's get rid of this harsh overhead light and put something on a little more pleasant. So that's what I'm trying to change. Oh, that's better. And but so the question then becomes: is it better? Is it better this way, or I mean, is it better with limited information, or is it better having bad information? Well, when you get bad information, it can confuse and cause a lot of problems for people. So if you had an experience where your deceased loved one came to you at your bedside, you physically touch your deceased loved one, then you go online looking for answers about this, it can cause a lot of pain, a lot of grief, because you'll hear all these people saying, "Oh, it's impossible this happened. You can't physically touch your loved one because they're made of smoke and they're vaporous. They're a spirit now, so they have no physical form." And then we hear this and we think, well, I guess my experience was a hallucination induced by grief. It actually pushes you back into materialism, because you have all these, you know, wannabe gurus and authors coming along and putting in their authoritative information about the afterlife, when in reality they have no authority on this subject, and they have no right to be telling people the way it is when they don't even know what the FUCK they're even talking about. So I've seen this come up so many times. I had an experience, a visitation experience. It felt so real, and my son, daughter, husband, wife, parent came to me at my bed, and we held hands for 10 minutes and talked. And then they're like, "It must not be right, because according to some near-death experience author, or some, you know, a celebrity medium, spirit people have no physical form because they exist as smoke. You know, they're, you know, as I always joke about orbs of light or whatever, and so it must not have been a real experience." And it's very sad to see this. In this case, I think it would be better if they didn't have any information like this at all. If they just used their own experience as a way to formulate what the afterlife is really like, what a higher dimensional realm is like, that it can be it's a real solid place, just like this world is. And if usually, I mean, it's the personal experiences that point toward that, and it's people's opinions that push us into some different direction. So a very good argument can be made that bad afterlife information is worse than no afterlife information. The flip side of this is that the bad information can send people, if it doesn't just leave somebody permanently confused or permanently with like kind of the wrong idea, it'll at least give people a primer. And so I've always enjoyed like the Leslie Flint tapes and hearing people talk about like what their experiences were when they died, and what their first thoughts were, because even back then in the spiritualist days, spirits coming through different sources like this would often say how surprised they were to find that they were still solid. They had a body that had fingernails, or they could feel the dirt on their hands, or whatever it is. They were very, very surprised, because even people coming out of the spiritualist era, I mean, there was this idea going that spirit people are all made of smoke or mist, or they're not solid people, or the world is dreamlike and it's not a real place. And so, when they actually then experienced, I can't say the D word, YouTube will censor me, when they transition, then they're surprised to find all this information was inaccurate or wrong. And you heard this a lot, and this was coming from groups of people who should have known better, groups of actual mediums and spiritualist circles, and they were still spreading the bad information, probably because the religious influence was just so thick and difficult to do away with that even in spiritualist areas, they still didn't always have the correct idea about what parallel dimensions are like. But the good thing is though, even if you get bad information, it at least gives you an idea that there is an afterlife, even if it's not quite the way it really is. You'll either discover this yourself, or you will you will use that as a primer to dig deeper into other sources of information to get a clearer idea of what's really going on. Interestingly, Swedenborg was probably the first person to come along and really talk about the afterlife as a solid, real parallel dimension, and he was doing it under the prism of Christianity. So he was basically, his audience were like 1700s Protestants, and he was introducing these concepts, and it turned out to be pretty darn accurate. And from thenceforth, going into the 1800s and the 1900s, there's been a lot of different areas of information which I think really, accurately describes what's going on, in that I can even juxtaposition with my own experiences doing out-of-body travel and going to these types of places and being like, yep, that's like I read about in the book. That's what Swedenborg talked about in the 1700s. A lot of examples of this, and I go into them on this channel or in my books. But there's many different cases where I've done that, or I've been able to verify these areas. So it really does seem like there is one path that when it comes to the material, there's certain types of material that creates an accurate perspective, and then there's a lot of other areas which do not. So even if you are only being exposed to the inaccurate information, like the one channeler who I won't name, who claims that we can't see things, touch things, smell things because we don't have physical apparatuses anymore, even if that is your source of information, if that at least opens the door and at least presents the belief enough to be able to investigate further, then that's okay. And ultimately, I do think that some kind of a belief in an afterlife is a more psychologically healthy way to live life than the alternative. Because despite what the materialists say and despite what people like Dawkins postulate, it doesn't make us not live in the moment. It actually gives us more to look forward to, because the universe makes a little bit more sense when we can understand that we are celestial beings, and life is eternal, and consciousness is the most important force, and that who we are never goes away. These things create inspiration, it motivates us, and makes a grim world filled with horrible pollution suddenly seem much nicer, much better, and more palatable to our moral, psychic sensibilities. So in this way, even if it's bad information, it still has benefit. But unfortunately, though, the bad information really infects this field, and it causes a lot of confusion and causes problems, especially for people grieving, and then like the bad information tends to replicate, especially all this stuff about like losing your individuality, merging into source consciousness, disappearing into whatever, or variations of that, which includes becoming a cosmic enlightened being after you die, or all the the like channeling Eric claiming like you can't hug people in the afterlife because you no longer have physical arms. It's like, this is stuff that when you don't have real information, you just, like, when your only source of information about the afterlife is that 1990s film Casper the Friendly Ghost, then that's then you end up just making assumptions to fill in the gaps, and that's the stuff that people come up with. It's also a surefire sign that the information is not coming from an accurate place. All right, well, I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna flip the AC on, because I'm telling you, it's freaking hot in here. And I'm going to wind the video up, but if you like what I have to say, if you like this stuff, and some of you don't, I know I get a lot of crap from a lot of people coming on this channel who have no interest in the field and just want to cause problems. But that's okay, that's YouTube, it's how it is for everybody, it's not a big deal. But if you're one of the people who actually likes this subject and likes what I have to say, then consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. $30 and above patrons, you guys can have access to the VIP discussion groups twice a week, behind the scenes for guests, and one-on-one consultation with me anytime you want it, within reason. I'm pretty busy sometimes, but you know, we can put something on a schedule if you're a patron and want to get involved in all of that. So please consider doing that to help me be able to keep doing this work while simultaneously doing things like eating food, which apparently I have to do to keep this body going. And you can check out afterlifetopics.com, Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife and Beyond, books that you can check out to hopefully get a clearer understanding of what awaits all of us when we get out of this mortal coil. Well, this is Cyrus. Thanks for watching. Time to get out of here and get back to work. And I'll see you all next time.